Big win for Syracuse.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Syracuse had to have it, and they got it done. The Orange take down the NC State Wolfpack 74-60 inside the Dome. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse, and thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, and of course, we are always free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on this post-game reaction show, we're going to talk about how the Orange led wire to wire in this one. We're going to go over the Orange's offensive and defensive game plans. We're also going to talk about the critical moments that led to Syracuse's victory. And we'll round out the show talking about where Syracuse sits in the ACC Tournament race. And before we get to everything, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Before we talk about the game itself, let's talk a little bit about the lead up and why this game was so critical. All right. So in the ACC standings ahead of this one, the Orange were just one game ahead of NC State. Now they lead the Wolfpack by 2 games with 3 to play. This is really important for later on when we talk about where Syracuse sits in the ACC tournament race, all right? Because these are 2 teams towards the bottom. Syracuse really needed it. So did NC State. The Orange come out on top. And now, in order for NC State to surpass Syracuse in the standings, here's what they got to do. They got to go 3-0 down the stretch, and Syracuse would have to go 0-3. I highly doubt that combination will happen. So this was a massive victory for Syracuse over NC State. And it was wire to wire. Credit to them. They snap a 3-game losing skid. I'm not going to sit here and try to overhype NC State as some great team, but you know what? They just beat Wake Forest. Maybe they're feeling good about themselves. Maybe they feel like they'll finally get a road conference win. And the Orange came out and just absolutely crushed NC State, really from start to finish. We'll get to later on in the podcast that one brief hiccup where it looked like NC State might make a little surge. But other than that part in the second half, Syracuse, they went up early and they stayed ahead throughout the game, so much so that NC State never led at any point in the game. Never. So credit to Syracuse on that. And I thought it might have been the Orange's night. There was this one moment earlier in the game where it was towards the end of a shot clock and J.J. Starling's not on the floor. Jaquan Carlos, of all people, has the ball in his hands. He drives down the right alley. He pulls up and hits a fadeaway jumper at the end of the shot clock, and it puts Syracuse up 19-8 with about 11 minutes to go in the first half. And when that moment happened, I thought, my goodness, it really might be Syracuse's night when Jaquan Carlos, of all players, is hitting a fadeaway jumper at the end of the shot clock. But let's talk about the game plan on offense, because really, this was why Syracuse basketball won the game. The game plan was simple. They attacked inside. Now, in case you missed the preview podcast from last night, I had on Grayson Boone and Kenton Gibbs, the hosts of Locked On Wolfpack. We did a crossover podcast talking about this game and the lead up to it. One of the weaknesses they mentioned of NC State this season has been their size. And well, Syracuse certainly took advantage of said weakness. So much so that the Orange took, as a team, just 8 3-pointers in the game. I had it in my notes, but I had to double check just to make sure I didn't miss some random 3 with 3 seconds to go, right? Those sometimes happen. They didn't, right? So Syracuse took 8 threes as a team in this one, and that is the fewest amount that the Orange have taken in a game all season long. We're not going to talk about that other time when they shot 9 threes in the game. We're not going to speak about that game, all right? But this was the fewest amount they've taken all season long. So they recognize that NC State is not good at defending the interior. So the Orange said, we're not going to settle by taking 3-pointers. And for what it's worth, they made 3 of 8. And later on in the podcast, we'll talk about how one of the critical moments of this game, actually 2 of the critical moments, was Syracuse hitting a couple of 3-pointers. So they made them when they absolutely had to make them, but that was not how Syracuse won this game. They really won this game with Eddie Lampkin and Jyare Davis down low. Both were absolutely outstanding in this one. 29 points on 10 of 14 shooting. NC State just had no answer for them. Absolutely no answer. NC State big man, their starter, Ben Middlebrooks, he committed his 4th foul of the game with 15:51 to go in the second half. The Orange were just absolutely bullying NC State from start to finish inside the paint. The paint points in this one, I am looking at it now. Are you ready for it? Because I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at the stat sheet. 46-22 for Syracuse inside the paint. They absolutely bullied the Wolfpack in this one. And the Orange also did a nice job of getting to the free throw line. They got to the free throw line, or they shot 24 free throw attempts in this one. Now, they only made 15 of them, which is only 63%. That's not good, but they got there a lot. So they had a game plan, get inside, feed the big fella, and let Eddie Lampkin go to work. Eddie Lampkin, another double-double. He had 14 points and 15 rebounds. I mentioned Jyare Davis. He had 15 points, 7 rebounds. We can also talk about J.J. Starling because I thought that once he started going to the basket, which was in that second half, he only had 2 points at the break, 15 in the second half. I thought he was terrific down the stretch. 17 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists for the game. So overall, Syracuse had an offensive game plan, which was very simple. Go to the rim. NC State cannot contain them, and they executed it pretty well. I wouldn't say to perfection, but they did a pretty darn good job. It was certainly enough for the Orange to get a win. Once again, I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse, and we're going over how the Orange took down the NC State Wolfpack 74-60 inside the Dome. And I would love to hear from you in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on Syracuse's victory and how the Orange attacked NC State on offense? Because coming up, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about Syracuse's game plan on defense. It was a little risky, but it worked. And we're also going to talk about the critical moments that led Syracuse to a win. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. One more thing that I forgot to mention in the previous segment, talking about Syracuse's game plan on offense. Even NC State's head coach knew that inside could be a problem for his team. NC State's head coach is Kevin Keatts, and he actually told the broadcast pregame that he was hoping that Eddie Lampkin would be shooting threes throughout the game because he knew that the Wolfpack could not stop Eddie Lampkin inside. So pretty much everyone in this game knew that Syracuse would have the edge inside the paint. And lo and behold, well, they outscore the Wolfpack 46-22 inside. So credit Syracuse on taking advantage of their size. Now, let's talk about the game plan on defense and the critical moments that led to Syracuse's victory. It was also pretty clear what the Orange were going to do on defense in this one. For the most part, they played man. There was that time in the second half where NC State was mounting a little comeback where they switched to zone, but really, it was really simple. Syracuse was going to pack the paint, and they were going to force NC State to shoot threes. And the reason why they wanted NC State to shoot threes is, once again, last night when talking to Grayson and Kenton from Locked On Wolfpack on that crossover episode, they told us that NC State is not a good shooting team. They do not shoot the three ball well, and the numbers back it up. It's not just the eye test. The numbers back it up. The Wolfpack came into the game shooting just 32.1% from three. That's bottom 5 in the ACC. That was just entering the game, and tonight for NC State, they go 8 for 27 from three-point range. That's 30%. That is just not going to get it done. Having said that, that is a risky defensive game plan. The reason why I say that is because, well, remember what happened when Syracuse played Miami on the road and Syracuse was just letting Miami shoot threes? Well, Miami isn't exactly a good three-point shooting team. They are the second worst three-point shooting team in the ACC. But on that night, Miami put up 91 points on Syracuse. So even though NC State is not a good three-point shooting team, and I wouldn't say we're just leaving them wide open, but there were a few looks throughout the game where NC State had a couple of missed opportunities, which is going to lead me, to the first critical moment that led to Syracuse's victory. So the Orange were up 12 with 2:30 left in the first half. That's a pretty nice lead for Syracuse, right? But you're still in the first half. There's over 22 minutes left in the game. Anything could still happen, right? And Bryce Hurd for NC State missed an open fast break three that could have made it a 9-point game for NC State. And who knows what happens if they're within single digits in the first half, because they were playing catch up from start to finish in this one. For the most part of this game, they were down by 10 plus points. But imagine if that was different and Bryce Hurd had made that three. Instead, he misses it, and I believe it went in and out. So it was close. And then Lucas Taylor on the other end for Syracuse hits a three of his own. It's a big 6-point swing. And so instead of NC State getting within 9, the Orange end up going up 36-21, which is a 15-point lead towards the end of the first half. I did mention how Syracuse's offensive game plan for the most part was going inside, but Lucas Taylor in that case hitting a big-time three-pointer to keep Syracuse up by a very comfortable 15 points, I should say. So that was a big moment, big 6-point swing right there. Second moment. I think we all had a feeling this would happen, where NC State, who trailed by as much as 19 points in the second half, I think we all kind of had a feeling that they were going to get a little hot. They were going to start making some shots. Syracuse was going to miss a couple shots. And next thing you know, they start to surge into the game. They start chipping away at that deficit. Well, in the second half with 8:38 to play, Dontrez Styles hits a three-pointer to get the Wolfpack within 8 points. I don't know about you all, but I was not thinking positively when Syracuse was only up by 8 with 8:38 to go, especially because Syracuse had also turned it over twice when NC State was full court pressing. Again, they just could not break a full court press. So there was a little moment of adversity midway through the second half, but then a big sequence happens for Syracuse. First of all, as soon as Styles hits the three-pointer, the Wolfpack go into full court press. Syracuse, for once, they actually break the press. Eddie Lampkin finds himself one-on-one a foot away from the rim against Brandon Huntley Hatfield, and Brandon Huntley Hatfield had absolutely no chance against Eddie Lampkin, and Lampkin dunks on him to put Syracuse back up by 10 points. Then Styles misses a three-pointer finally because he was starting to get going in that second half. And J.J. Starling, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I do believe it was late in the shot clock or towards the end of it, but I'm not entirely sure. My memory might be a little off on this one. But he hits a big left wing contested three-pointer that put the Orange up by 13 points with 7:18 to go. That might have been the shot of the game because when J.J. Starling hits that three to put him up by 13 points, again, I don't know about you all, but this is how I felt. That feeling of, are we really going to blow this game? Went away. As soon as he hit that shot, I was like, yeah, Syracuse is going to win this game. They're just going to win this game. I don't know how, but they're going to win this game because J.J. Starling, who's not a very good three-point shooter, who had been missing all of his three-point attempts prior to that one, makes a really tough left wing three to put the Orange up by 13 points. And then about a minute later, he attacks inside. He pulls up for a jumper, and he puts the Orange up by 15 points with 5:32 to go in the game. It was a huge 7-0 run. An Eddie Lampkin dunk, J.J. Starling three, and a J.J. Starling jumper that really turned the game once again back into Syracuse's favor. Just when you thought NC State, when they pulled within 8 points, oh boy, they might have themselves a comeback here. Not so fast, said Eddie Lampkin and J.J. Starling. So overall, that was the defensive game plan, and those were the critical moments that led to Syracuse's victory. I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below. What were some moments throughout that game where you felt Syracuse was going to win? What are some, were you also panicked like I was? Like, oh boy, is Syracuse really going to blow a 19-point lead in the second half to NC State at home? Boy, that would have been a real rock bottom, wouldn't it? Oh boy. But they didn't. But I'd love to hear from you in the comments section below. Coming up, we'll talk about where Syracuse sits in the ACC at this time. So stick with me here on Locked On Syracuse. This was a massive victory for Syracuse in regards to potentially making the ACC tournament. They are now on the doorstep of playing more than just a couple of games in March. They do have 2 that are scheduled in the regular season, but we would like some postseason action, or at least I would like to see some postseason action in the Orange. It seems like they are going to be playing in the conference tournament after this victory over NC State. So right now, Syracuse is 6-11 in the ACC. That is, sucks to say, but it's true. They are 5th worst in the conference. Now, the good news is that only the bottom 3 teams missed the ACC tournament. And now Syracuse leads NC State by 2 games with 3 to go. And oh, by the way, they hold the head-to-head tiebreaker. So, like I said at the top of this podcast, the only way that NC State can surpass Syracuse in the standings is if they go 3-0 and Syracuse goes 0-3 down the stretch. So the Orange and NC State, I think Syracuse, it's pretty safe to say that they are going to finish above the Wolfpack in the conference standings when all is said and done. I just don't see how NC State goes 3-0. I can't see that happening. And I don't think Grayson or Kenton would think that either. As far as some of the other games that are important, well, at the time of this recording, they are either in progress or have not exactly happened yet. We're still waiting the results from Cal, who plays at home against SMU at 11 p.m. Eastern. And right now, at the time I'm recording this, Boston College is playing on the road at Stanford. Cal has 5 conference wins. Boston College has 4 wins in the ACC. Here's the good news regarding those teams, okay? if there is a three-way tiebreaker or even more than three teams that are tied, and the teams that I am talking about are Syracuse, NC State, Boston College, and Cal. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Guess what? Syracuse would finish above all of those teams in the ACC. You know why? They own the tiebreaker. They went 4-0 against those teams in the regular season. Translation: Syracuse basketball is essentially in the ACC tournament, barring it's about to be March, so I guess barring some madness, they are going to at least be playing in the conference tournament. Thank goodness, because as I have said before, and I will say it again, I would rather see this team make the conference tournament than deal with the embarrassment of actually missing the ACC tournament. That would be a real shame if Syracuse didn't even make that. And those teams also would have to get ridiculously hot down the stretch, which I also don't see happening. So overall, with this win, 6 wins in the conference now, we're in pretty decent shape to make the conference tournament. I know it has not been the season that you would have wanted, that I would have wanted, that really any Syracuse fan would want, but thank goodness they avoided disaster tonight. Thank goodness. So the Orange are probably going to make the ACC tournament. That's the good news, all right? As far as what is coming up on Locked On Syracuse in the future, tomorrow, we're going to shift gears and talk about some football, all right? We're going to get some football content for you all because FanDuel finally, they released the odds, or not the odds, they released the over-under win totals for every team in the ACC in the regular season. Syracuse is at 5.5 this season. Last year, for context, they were at 7.5. So I will be giving you my thoughts on that tomorrow in a full podcast. Also, ACC Squad is back tomorrow. I promise it's not just me and Isaac Shade this time. We had a few more people join the panel this time around, so that's good for you all. So 2 episodes tomorrow. You got a Locked On Syracuse podcast talking some Syracuse football, and you got ACC Squad. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. For your second listen, you can check out the Locked On College Basketball podcast with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. Don't wait for March. Be the most informed college basketball fan right now. You can find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, Syracuse basketball takes down NC State 74-60, and they are all but in the ACC tournament. Thank goodness. I'm Jackson Holzer. This is Locked On Syracuse. And if you like the podcast, be sure to hit that like button. If you really enjoy the podcast, be sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you could just do me a little favor, just tell 1 or 2 of your closest Syracuse friends about the Locked On Syracuse podcast so this channel can grow and reach all Syracuse Orange fans. And I will see you all again soon.